Luke, where are you and what have you been hearing from where you are?
Well, I'm in Artemvisk, which is about 40 or so kilometers from the front line. The news from Minsk not really trickling down here. What we can expect, though, is a certain degree of, if not satisfaction, at least relief from the residents here. As I said, they're very close to the front line here. Military vehicles are through patrolling around, in and around the city pretty much all day and all night. We've also been hearing all day and all night very heavy artillery barrages. Many of those artillery firing incidents are likely to have not exactly left the residents feeling pretty ill at ease. That would indicate then that there's going to be a great deal of relief. It has to be said, as we've been hearing, this ceasefire is not to be put into place until the midnight on the 15th. That is 3 days away still, really. So what does that indicate? What extent is the violence going to continue here on the ground? We were just at the front line, one of the main bases, the last real base on the road between Artemvisk and Debaltseve. We had to evacuate that base because they were expecting a heavy bombardment. With that kind of situation on the ground, the violence still on the ground, also the loss of life still likely to be expected in the coming days until that ceasefire is put into place. Realistically, that means the loss of life could continue. And of course, that is a great shame for all of those involved.
Luke, earlier we were hearing from one doctor on France 24 in one of our pieces, I believe, where she was basically saying, regardless of who's in charge, all we want is peace. Do you feel that that's something that people you've been speaking to feel as well, that at this point they don't really care who wins, they just want the fighting to stop?
This conflict is really much like the artillery shells. It's flying over the heads of many of the local residents. They feel very much caught in the crossfire. Here on Artemvisk, we are definitely on one side of the line. That doesn't necessarily the people here support the Ukrainian government in whose territory they do find themselves. There is very mixed feelings amongst many residents in the east about to what extent who is culpable for the violence. Is it Kiev? Is it the separatists? Is it Moscow? So I think there's a bit of a blame game still going around, going with that relief that this ceasefire could be put into place. And also, when you look at the villages that are caught really in the no man's land, if you will, with the lines are about 20 to 15 kilometers apart in different places. That means there are a great deal of small and medium-sized villages and towns that are still caught in between the two front lines. The residents of those have either been evacuated or we tried to reach one of those villages earlier today. A couple of hundred of residents are still basically in their basements, and they've been in their basements for the past 10 days or so. Virtually impossible to get in or out of those villages. They're very low on supplies of water, of medical supplies, and of food too, as well as, of course, many of them have suffered injuries and they can't get out or be evacuated to medical facilities. Once again, the question of that ceasefire only coming into place on the 15th, well, frankly, I think that's 3 days too long for the people caught in the crossfire in no man's land.
Luke, one of the big question marks still that we don't have any real details yet is this town of Debaltseve that's been the site of major fighting in recent days. Talk us through the importance of that particular town.
Debaltseve is incredibly strategic for both sides. For the Ukrainian government forces, it's a key rail hub which allows them to really, it's a pocket, if you will, of their forces that have really pushed, that have been left really behind by the withdrawal on the other side. But it's it's an obstacle for the separatists on the other hand, and it prevents them from being able to link up their supply lines between their two biggest cities that they hold, that's Lugansk and Donetsk, the two capitals of the regions that have been under their control for the past 6 months or so. So it's strategic for both sides, and it's the kind of defeat there is not. It's more significant than the symbolic defeat that we saw for the Ukrainian forces in Donetsk airport in the past month. It is much more strategically important than that for the reasons that I've already outlined. That strategic importance has really been demonstrated by the ferocity of the fighting in and around Debaltseve for the past week. It was possible the end of last week and maybe up until about Sunday to get in or out of the city. But the violence has just been getting more and more intense. The fighting is getting more and more intense around Debaltseve as the separatists have really pushed their offensive. They've closed off pretty much the sole route, the road between the Debaltseve and Arkhangis to the north, where the Ukrainian government forces are based. They've closed it off using explosive mines across the road. That means no supplies can get in or out, and no evacuations can get out of the various soldiers that have been injured. We know on a daily basis at least 20 or so Ukrainian soldiers were reported dead. It is likely once this ceasefire is put into place and access is gained to that city of Debaltseve, that it is likely that the death toll is set to rise. So I think the 15th of February can't really come soon enough, I think, for the besieged soldiers. And there are many hundreds of them, besieged soldiers of the Ukrainian government forces in Debaltseve.
All right, Luke, thank you for that. Luke Brown there reporting from eastern Ukraine saying the 15th of February can't come soon enough. All right, let's